All right, all you Autobots and Decepticons out there, during your missions, you need to have all your weapons on you at all times. So this episode, we're talking about hardpoints. I know a number of you out there have been commenting on our previous videos on the Transformers role-playing game, as seen right here. And the one confusing thing, the one thing that I didn't go over, I kind of glossed over, is hardpoints. What are they? How are we supposed to use them? How much gear am I allowed to take with me? And kind of the whole process of equipping your equipment. And one of the things about this game is things that it doesn't need to care about, it doesn't care about. So things like weight and tonnage and how heavy is this gun and how big is that gun. Your Transformers that transform from giant 80-foot robots into cars, into motorcycles, into planes, into spaceships, into satellites, they kind of gloss over and basically say none of that matters. What does matter is how many hard points do you have, and what are the different types of hard points. So when they talk about external hard points, effectively they mean these mitts, your fingers, basically your hands when you're in robot mode. So every character, unless you're weirdly constructed, you have two external hard points. You have two mitts. And in robot mode, it is assumed that you can carry enough gear on your person, stowed away in a compartment, held in your hand, attached to your back, to hold enough gear that you can hold 6 hands worth of gear. Which means if a weapon requires 2 hands, well, it's 2 out of your 6 hands. You have a blaster, that's another hand. You have a small bladed weapon or a small melee weapon, well, that's another hand of stuff. So effectively, it goes into how many hands of stuff can you carry. And like I said, we can have on our person up to 6 hands worth. What it also indicates in here is that there are internal hardpoints, and those don't count against that 6-hand limit. So they're kind of like you have ports built onto your body where you can kind of stow weapons on your shoulder, maybe integrated into your wrists. These are hard points that are kind of designed to fold away when they're not needed. But the benefit of internal hard points is you can use them while you're in your vehicle mode. So if you're a F-15 fighter plane, fighter jet, if you're a big, like Optimus Prime, you're a big, 18-wheeler truck, you're, Sideswiper Bumblebee, and you're in your car mode, you have internal hard points, you can kind of pop out a missile launcher and shoot at somebody and then pop that back away. There are some restrictions. But your external hard points, you can't use them while you're in vehicle mode. So that's the detriment. So you can have more stuff in your external hard points, and some equipment does limit where it can go, but you can only use that when you're in robot mode and you're fully decked out, 2 legs, 2 arms mode that you can kind of swap in and out the weapons you need. Oh, you got a big blaster, the person's far away, you can pick up the big blaster and shoot them. Or you need to, you close combat and, you need to, you're Grimlock and you need to take on the enemy and take out your big Energon sword. You can whip out your Energon sword, and that's all fine. So we're going to talk about what the difference is of all of this stuff. First things first, when we're talking about internal hardpoints, every character has 2 internal hardpoints. That just comes with your character. If you're allowed to install a particular weapon on an internal hardpoint, the number of hardpoints it takes up is the number of hands it takes to wield. So if an item requires you 2 hands, it's going to take up both of your internal hardpoints. So be mindful when you're determining whether a hardpoint is, if you're attaching a weapon to an internal hardpoint, what that may mean for your character. When we're also talking about an internal hardpoint, is the weapon visible to the public? Because if we are playing in the idea of we're Transformers and we are in disguise, your internal hardpoints can be open and out and display in the public, which may or may not make sense. Yet again, you are trying to, you are robots in disguise. So if you're an F-15 fighter pilot, a fighter jet, or you're a tank, an M1 Abrams tank, or you're some sort of military vehicle, it may make sense for you to have your hardpoints and your weapons visible to the public. How also consider how normal is it to have a military vehicle driving on the highway just for the hell of it. If you decide to have it a hidden weapon, so it's maybe on the trunk of your car, the hood of your car, or it's on the top of your car, or maybe your door pops out and a weapon swings out and shoots and then tucks back away, those require a free action to deploy to be able to use it, and the free action to then tuck it back away. So as we talked about in the how to play video, how many free actions you have is dependent on your speed. So you may not have free actions because if you're too slow, you may have only one free action, you may have multiple free actions. Also, weapons in integrated hardpoints are smaller because they have to kind of maintain the hidden component, and it has to be part of your vehicle in some way. So the weapon kind of shrinks down to accommodate that spot. What this does mean if the weapon has a brawn requirement, meaning that you have to be minimally brawny to wield that weapon, that requirement goes down by a die size. That's a good thing because the weapon is less wieldy, it's a little less heavy, but there's a detriment that comes into integrated hardpoints, is that if you move up to your speed, you get a downshift dice when you use that weapon. If you move beyond your speed by the use of free actions or by other means, it's a downshift of 2. So it's harder to shoot these things on the move than it is if you were just hand wielding a weapon or whatever in your regular hands, your external hardpoints, your mitts. So these are a little more difficult to use, but they are lighter. So maybe if you're not as brawny of a character, you may be more focused on your integrated hardpoints. And like I said, so when you move, little harder to hit. If you're moving, if you're staying still, you're good. There's a way to mitigate this. You can reinforce your hardpoints, which is another upgrade that we can talk about later. And also the other limitation is some items cannot be equipped into integrated hardpoints, or the integrated hardpoint may only say this is an equipment or this is a weapon hardpoint. So how much gear are we allowed to effectively take? As you see, I'm, got my book here. You'll see me refer to a couple times. So there are certain things that are available to all Autobots. All Transformers, you're going to have this available to you effectively at all times. Every Autobot is able to access a blaster and a close combat blade or bludgeon, so a beating weapon or a stabbing or slashing weapon, and either a rifle or shotgun. Those are allowed to, you don't have to make any rolls, you don't have to ask for permission. This is generally assumed that you have access to these weapons and they're general enough that they're kind of like lying around. You also have access to a combination of either 2 frag grenades or 2 concussion grenades. Regardless of your selections at character creation, your role, your chassis, your influences, every Autobot is trained and able to use all of these weapons. So even though if you pick the rifle as your part of your loadout, and your buddy drops their shotgun, and it happens to be next to you, and you need to shoot something, you pick it up and shoot, you can pick it up and shoot, no problem. So long as you have the appropriate skill, you just make the skill check. There may be, during particular missions, mission critical items. Your GM will tell you what any mission critical items or any items you'll receive through gameplay, and you'll be able to kind of grab them. To assign an item to an internal hardpoint, and a lot of this is going to focus on internal hardpoints because external hardpoints we can mostly understand is your hands. So maybe maybe you have 2 pistols and you're going around and blasting with 2 pistols, but you also have maybe a blade on your person. Okay, I just swap out and use my blade instead. So that's pretty easy to grasp our heads around, but we're trying to figure out the integrated part, which is kind of, I think, the point of contention here for a lot of people. So for each internal hardpoint on your character, you can choose to assign a weapon or piece of gear to that item. You must be trained or qualified with a specific weapon or gear, or be granted access to the item through some other means. As I said before, if the item is two-handed, it takes up 2 internal integrated hardpoints. Your role and general perks may give you access and qualify you to use specific gear. It is assumed you have access to that and you shouldn't have to requisition it. For instance, gunners are qualified with limited ballistic weapons. When you go in to request your gear, which we're going to get into how we request gear that we normally wouldn't have access to. Since the gunner has access to limited ballistic gear, he can pick a limited ballistic item for free without making a check, and also doesn't eat into any requisition tests that you may make before you go into your mission, which we're going to test on what that means in a second. So now we have our 2 integrated hardpoints. We have up to 6 hands worth of stuff we can use in our external hardpoints, which are our hands, on our character, and it's going to be some sort of integrated into our body. Like I said, it could be a wrist integrated thing that can like pop out and it's a free blade that we can get, or it could be on our body, or it could be kind of folded away, and then when we transform, we have access to it, but we wouldn't be able to have access to it in a vehicle mode. So we have the external hardpoints stowed away in our body, integrated hardpoints, which we can pop out in vehicle mode. And then it's like, okay, well, what happens if I want more? Or we feel that we need more stuff to complete our mission. So Wheeljack comes up to you and says, like, dude, I got a mission. I'm building some sort of satellite dish out in the middle of nowhere. I need you to go defend it. Here's what I expect you to go to run into. Okay, great. Because you told us that maybe Starscream and Thundercrack are going to be prowling the area. Okay, now we maybe need to know that we need to deal with aerial combatants. Maybe we're going to kind of bulk up our ranged damage, inventory of stuff. Maybe we want to take some repair kits, and we want to take other gear that we would normally maybe not normally have access to. As we already said, we kind of told you what's standard issue for each Autobot, depending on your character, and also everyone has some standard gear that they can pull from. Now we're going to get into some more rare stuff that the Autobots may not want to part with because, hey, you may be green. We don't want to give you all the good stuff right away. There is a requisition budget. Like I said, this is generally before you go out on the mission, or maybe there's multi-part mission where you come back to the Ark, you kind of repair and report in, and you go, okay, now that the situation is evolved, we may need more stuff. So you can requisition effectively anything. Effectively anything. And there's a caveat to that. This can include uncommon items and superior grade equipment, also upgrades to your different weapons and armor and hardpoints. Now, some missions may limit how many requisition tests you can make, but we're going to give the general amount. If a mission doesn't list a requisition budget, it is assumed the budget is 3 per player. Effectively, the attempts are pooled together. So if you have 4 players, they have effectively 12 attempts, 12 requisition tests. Now, the players can decide amongst themselves that they all want 3 each, or maybe they really want to get a piece of gear for a particular character, and they may want to try and get that item, even though it may be a difficult test. They're going to try to get that item. So they may use up multiple attempts on that one player character trying to get this one item. So they don't have to split it up. It's really up to the players and how they divvy out the requisition tests. So effectively, the players as a group pick a piece of equipment that they want to requisition for a particular character. Or, I mean, the item can be shared. It doesn't really matter. They choose a piece of equipment, and then they make a skill test related to the use of the equipment. For example, requisitioning a restricted firearm requires a targeting skill test. They need to make sure that you know how to shoot the damn thing. Requisitioning armor upgrades requires athletics or might if it provides a bonus to toughness, acrobatics or finesse if it provides a bonus to evasion. So that depending on the gear, they want to make sure that you're skilled enough to actually use it, and to make sure that it's going, it's like, look, if you can't use it and you're not going to be good, they're worried it's going to get destroyed or lost or given to the enemy, or not even given to the enemy, or maybe you get defeated and the enemy now has access to all this higher level technology. So you compare your result with the equipment's availability difficulty. So each piece of equipment will have a difficulty number next to it, telling you what the difficulty number that has to be beaten by the players to be able to have them get access to that piece of gear. Failure means effectively, they said, Wheeljack says, nope, you can't have it. You're not good enough. And it's using up one of your attempts at requisitioning items. So of that 12, we used up 1. We tried to make the test. Oh, we rolled a 3. Oh man, now we have 11 more to use. Effectively, success means you get the item. You use up the attempt, you get the item, everything's all hunky-dory. This does mean you can attempt prototype or experimental technology and in attempting to that skill test, but obviously those difficulty tests are going to be much higher, much more difficult. So the lower level your characters are and the lower your skills and related to using that piece of equipment is, the lower chance of success. So you might be, maybe you all decided that you wanted certain pieces of gear, and maybe you rolled really well, and maybe you have like 2 or 3 attempts left. Hey, let's try that for that prototype piece of technology. It'd be fun to use and it might help us in a pinch, but it's not really necessary. And we want to burn up some of these requisitions. Why the hell not? Maybe we're going to fish for a 20, fish for something really good. Have at it. Yeah, even if it says here, if skill or luck is on your side, you can access rare or powerful items on your mission. It is your responsibility as an Autobot to know when it is worth potentially wasting a requisition attempt in the name of a piece of equipment. So yet again, it may be behoove the players to go, okay, what's the general stuff that's slightly more advanced than what we're not allowed to have? Let's try for that stuff first, because that will greatly, the risk for reward, the risk isn't too great. We're probably going to make that check, or if we run through a couple of attempts, it's not that bad. But you know, some of those difficulty tests, maybe it's like a 1 in 20, 1 in 30 chance of us being successful. May not be good to waste 4, 5, 6, 7 attempts on those pieces of equipment when the likelihood of you succeeding is very low. As here, as an Autobot or any, who knows, you may be playing Decepticons, you may be playing unaffiliated Transformers. As Transformers, you may be tougher than most, but even you have your limits. Instead of tracking mass and volume, as I said before, you effectively have cargo space, hidden compartments, magnetic clamps to carry 6 hands of external stuff, as I mentioned before. And then, like I said, anything that's set to an internal hardpoint, that's in an integrated, call it internal, an integrated hardpoint, that doesn't count towards this limit. So you can have all your integrated hardpoints filled up and then 6 hands beyond that of stuff that you can carry. Anything more than that, you don't have the room on the space on your person to carry it. So maybe you may, like someone else holds off a piece of equipment for you because you don't have, maybe you're the weapons guy and you have all the weapons, you have all the guns. Or maybe someone else needs to carry those repair kits. Maybe someone else needs to carry that, device that's helping you traverse the distance. Maybe you have a GPS or some sort of integrated piece of helpful equipment that you can't hold on your person. That's someone else's job. They got to hold that piece. There is another thing here that there are armor and weapon upgrades, different upgrades you can attach to your character, attach to your different weapons, maybe boost up your armor. You can request these upgrades as part of your acquisition kit. This means that the permanent item on your character for that mission that you're going on. And every mission you can kind of request different things depending on the mission requirements. You may, okay, so you got this armor upgrade this time, but next time, well, that armor upgrade really is not helpful in this situation. You basically give back the armor upgrade and you request a different one. If you really want an armor upgrade and say you couldn't request it, or you didn't have, maybe the difficulty was you maybe ran out of requisition points, or so maybe you gave all your requisitions to another character so they can get kitted out to the teeth and armed to the gills. You can spend a point of energon to gain access to an armor upgrade or a weapon upgrade that lasts for 1 scene. So if you're in a battle, you're in a fight, you can consume a piece of energon. Effectively, you craft it out of your body and your stores of energon, and you get a temporary armor upgrade or temporary weapon upgrade that lasts for that 1 scene, and then it goes away. So if you've used up that energon for that scene. If you're creating an armor or weapon upgrade that you're trained or qualified with, or meet the prerequisites for, you only spend 1 point of energon to create that armor upgrade, that temporary armor or weapon upgrade. If you don't meet any of those requirements and you still want to make it, you can. It just costs you 2 points of energon to make that, and it still lasts for just that 1 scene. And there's even different little support equipments and different little kits that you can acquire. There are consumables that you can use, or they give you small benefits as a support item. Yet again, all these things have to be put on your body, and they all use up a hard point of some sort of some description, depending on what it is. And weapon rarity is listed in the following way. There it is. Automatic, which means you basically pass. Without automatic are things you're already trained with. Like the things we started off with before. It's like, close combat, blade or bludgeon, blaster, rifle, shotgun. These are automatic. You don't have to make checks for these. Anything that's automatic generally doesn't require a test. I would imagine that it wouldn't require a test because it effectively is difficulty 0. Standard also, these are things that come standard on your character if you want them. Then we start getting into limited, and these are in order of increasing difficulty to acquire them. And they'll have a difficulty listed in the book here of what's the test, the difficulty test to acquire these items in the beginning of the mission. So we have limited, restricted, prototype, unique, and theoretical. So trust me, when Wheeljack's developing something theoretical, he's not just going to hand it to a greenhorn. You got to know what you're doing. But yeah, hopefully that clears up the idea of integrated hardpoints, how we get hardpoints, what are hardpoints, how do I get the stuff from my character, what am I allowed to take with me, what do I have to make a test for? So what are your favorite items and hardpoints and weapons and armor upgrades from the Transformers role-playing game? Sound off in the comments down below. But until then, may our die rolls be crits and may you always roll max damage. See you later.